Welcome to this explainer. Look, if you're learning English, you've probably hit that wall where things just completely stop making sense. But here's the secret. English grammar isn't actually trying to confuse you. The truth is, your highly intelligent native Russian brain is just playing some perfectly logical tricks on you. You see, your brain is just trying to be efficient. It's taking the rules it already knows and trying to apply them to a totally different system. So today, we're going to expose those tricks so you can stop fighting your native language and finally start mastering English.
Okay, let's dive right into this. I will do a decision, or maybe it is less better. If you've ever caught yourself saying something like this, don't panic. You are absolutely not alone. These are classic A2 level mistakes, but I want to assure you right off the bat, these errors, they don't happen because you aren't studying hard enough. They happen for a very specific, deeply ingrained structural reason.
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the mother tongue trap, then look at word forms, strict sentence order, vocabulary blocks, and finally, how to actually reprogram those language habits.
Section 1. The Mother Tongue Trap. Unmasking the Culprit.
Think of me as your personal grammar detective for this explainer, because we are about to unmask the real culprit behind the most frustrating mistakes you make. Think about Russian syntax. It's beautifully fluid, right? It's morphological, meaning you can move words around almost however you want, just because the word endings tell you exactly who is doing what. But then we look at English. English is literally built like a brick wall. It relies on a super strict structure, where the meaning is completely driven by prepackaged blocks and a rigid word order. This is exactly why direct word-for-word translation totally fails. You just can't apply those fluid rules to a brick wall.
Section 2. Word forms, endings, and degrees. The missing ly and more.
That massive structural difference brings us right to how we form descriptions and comparisons. In English, an adjective describes a noun, like a careful driver, but an adverb describes a verb, like drives carefully. Most of the time, it's simple. We just add ly to the adjective. Quick becomes quickly, beautiful becomes beautifully. Now, in Russian, the difference between describing a noun and a verb feels pretty effortless, and it's super common to just drop the ending in casual speech. But in English, if you drop that ly, you aren't just being casual. You are making a grammatical error that genuinely, physically hurts a native speaker's ears. Oh, and you also have to memorize the ultimate rule breaker here. Good doesn't become goodly. No, it strictly becomes well.
Now, what's really interesting here is how English compares things. It has two distinct ways, and it depends entirely on the length of the word. Short words just get an er at the end, like quieter. Long words, they get a more slapped in front of them, like more beautiful. But your native language mostly uses one universal method for comparisons, and that creates this massive temptation for your brain to just default to the long rule. Suddenly, you're incorrectly saying things like more quiet instead of quieter. Also, you gotta watch out for the spelling trap. Short words like big double their consonant to bigger, and since that spelling rule doesn't exist in your native tongue, you just have to memorize it.
But wait, it always gets trickier, doesn't it? Because there are always rebels, words that completely ignore the rules we just talked about. Good becomes better, bad becomes worse. And this is exactly where we get that wonderful Frankenstein-like phrase, less better. It happens when your brain essentially panics, mixes up the more/less rule, and tries to awkwardly apply it to a word that already has its very own unique comparative form.
Section 3. Strict order, adverbs and questions. Sentence skeletons.
So we've seen how the words themselves change. Now let's look at where we actually put them. Think of English as having a very, very rigid sentence skeleton. You literally cannot bend its bones. Take adverbs of frequency, things like always, usually, or often. In Russian, you can scatter these words almost anywhere in a sentence, and the meaning stays totally clear and natural. But English, it demands that these words go into very specific, completely non-negotiable slots. Let's quickly walk through these 3 strict positioning rules. Step 1. They absolutely must go before the main verb, so I often go. Step 2. If the verb is to be, the adverb goes right after it. She is always late. And step 3, in a negative sentence, it squeezes in right after the auxiliary verb. He doesn't often travel. Because these slots are so strict, if you just translate directly and say he doesn't go often, you are breaking the skeleton. It has to be he doesn't often go. And that skeleton gets even more rigid when we ask questions. In Russian, forming a question is beautifully simple. You basically just use pure emotion and raise your intonation. The words don't change at all. But in English, it requires a full mechanical structural change. You have to insert the auxiliary verbs do or does in the present simple. You can't just say, he live here with a questioning voice. You need that mechanical, does he live here? Leaving out do or does is probably the most common mistake, precisely because that structural mechanism simply does not exist in your native language.
Section 4. Vocabulary blocks, verbs, and emails. Pre-packaged blocks.
So if English grammar is a rigid skeleton, English vocabulary often operates like these pre-packaged concrete blocks. In Russian, complex actions are usually captured in a single, really powerful verb, but English prefers to build an action using a block, usually just a basic verb combined with a noun or a preposition. You simply cannot translate these word for word. This is exactly why your mind tricks you into translating the single word for decide and accidentally spitting out do a decision. You have to memorize the entire English block, make a decision.
So the crucial point here is that you're frequently dealing with structures that literally don't exist in your native tongue. A perfect example is the gerund. It's a verb form ending in ing that acts like a noun. Because this concept is completely foreign to Russian grammar, it acts as this massive missing puzzle piece, causing major confusion, especially when you're writing professional emails.
And that leads us to the ultimate email trap. I look forward to hearing from you. Instinctively, because you see the word to, your brain immediately screams that it should be followed by an infinitive, right? Like to hear. But look forward to is a fixed, prepackaged expression, and it strictly requires that gerund ing form after it. Saying to hear is a classic trap that instantly gives away that you're translating in your head. While we're on the topic of business emails, standard formulas apply to your opening and closing. Always open formally, with Dear Mr. or Ms. and their surname, and then close with best regards. But look at the calendar for a second. Dates are a major trap. In English, dates strictly use ordinal numbers, the 12th of March. A subtle but incredibly common error is translating directly from Russian and using cardinal numbers, writing the 12th of March. It's a tiny detail, sure, but it makes a huge difference in how professional you sound.
Section 5. Reprogramming language habits. How to fix the glitch.
Okay, we've unmasked the culprits, we've looked at all the traps. So now, how do we actually fix it? I know you're putting in the hard work, but reading these rules, it's just not enough. Your brain is wired to translate. The ultimate fix here is muscle memory. You need to return to the areas where you make the most mistakes and speak the correct English blocks out loud repeatedly. You literally have to reprogram your vocal cords and your brain to feel comfortable with the English structure. That's how you override your deep-seated habit of translating word for word.
Now you know exactly why your brain makes these mistakes. It's not a lack of knowledge, it's a fundamental difference in the architectural design between the two languages. So I want to leave you with this. Moving forward, will you continue to let the fluid rules of your native language dictate your English, or are you ready to embrace the structure, build the muscle memory, and start speaking in blocks? The choice is entirely yours. Keep practicing, keep speaking aloud, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.